Hi, good afternoon. I'm Valerie Milano from the Hollywood Times, and I want to welcome our two guests today. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves, please. Thank you.
Sure. I'm JoeBill Muñoz, and I am, along with Lucas, directing and producing The Strike. And I'm in New York City.
And I am Lucas Guilkey, documentary filmmaker in Oakland, California.
Wonderful. And I'm so happy that I got to see this film. It's an amazing film, and I'm one of the lucky ones. And I hope everybody gets to see it. And I want to excuse myself from the background noise, but we're going to get through this interview. And thank you to both of you for taking the time with us today. And so, what was the process like for obtaining all of the carrying accounts of the inmates and other interviewees? What was the process like?
Yeah, well, so our film is about hunger strikes that happened in Pelican Bay State Prison. People were being held for decades in solitary confinement. Um, and when the hunger strikes were happening, I started filming and spending time with some of the family members of the hunger strikers. Um, and so a number of years later, when these guys, men who had spent decades of their lives in solitary and were now in middle to late life, got out of prison through previous relationships that we had built, we connected with them and filmed with some of them on their release date. Um, yeah, and we prefer not to use words like inmates or prisoners if possible. We like humanizing language like incarcerated people. And so we met these guys and started filming with them, and they were very generous with their time and then gave us some incredible interviews.
Yeah, I'll just add to that we started kind of this process of filming with them and meeting them around 2019 when some of the guys were, not only let out of solitary confinement, but let out of prison altogether. And so some of the guys we met a year or two after they had been released, and then other guys, as Lucas said, we were there to capture when they finally walked out of the prison.
Yeah, what amazing film. I mean, it takes a lot of courage. I mean, all of it. In your opinion, why do you think the nuance of a prisoner was never considered before being sent to the shoe?
Like, why has this story not been told before? Or
Yes.
that's a great question. I mean, prisons are by design made to erase people from society and public consciousness. And I think Pelican Bay in particular, windowless concrete cells on the Oregon border in the redwood forest. Um, so, some folks have said, these men were voiceless. Like, they're not voiceless. They have a voice. Um, they write a lot. They do whatever they can, but the hunger strike was their plea, being like, we are civilly dead. Like, somebody, like, seriously listen to us. Um, so yeah, and I think, there has been a fair amount of coverage of solitary confinement in general, Pelican Bay a little bit, but not enough of the hunger strikes themselves. And we've seen it in print, but not in documentary film.
I'll just add that, as Lucas said earlier, it wasn't just that they were in uh, solitary confinement, or it wasn't just that they were in prison, but it was that they were in solitary confinement. And so even after the hunger strikes in 2011 and 2013, even though that did get attention at the time, and they were released into they got out of solitary confinement shortly thereafter that, but they didn't really get out of prison altogether until many years later, and so that's kind of when we kind of came into the picture. So for those reasons and for the reasons Lucas said, you know, that this kind of story really couldn't have been made until now, until really those guys had the opportunity to speak to us and to share their stories publicly.
And the two of you personally, why was this important for you to make?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, I'm a lifelong California resident, and so I was shocked when I learned how long our state was holding people in solitary confinement. And I just felt an urgency that like everyone needs to know about this. I also think it's an incredible model for social change and social transformation, and how organizing from below is what changes injustices and transforms society. And there's a lot to be learned from this movement.
Yeah, and for me personally, I think, I um I cared about this from a distance, but I also like have my own personal kind of relationship and connection to incarceration. But as much as I felt like I knew about that and I felt like I understood that and it had a place in my life and in my thinking, it really wasn't until meeting these guys, hearing their stories, that I really got invested. And I think that viewers will have that same experience when you listen to not only what happened and what was done to them in terms of the injustices of incarceration and of solitary confinement, but once you hear how they use that, um, how they use their stories to really kind of for their own freedom, but also for the freedom of others. I think that message and that story was really inspiring for me. And it was kind of that aha moment that one has when they realize that a story is more than just one individual person's story, but it's like something that can be a film and that can be shared and that can be inspiring for a lot of people.
So what's one message that you would like the viewers to take away from the strike?
That's a hard question because there's so many takeaways that we would want viewers to have. Um, but just one thing that I've been thinking about recently is just how sort of I think in the last few years we've all or public consciousness has become more aware of incarceration, of mass incarceration. We have all these new terms and ways of thinking about things, and sort of really kind of critically analyzing the criminal justice system writ large. But I don't know if enough time and attention and consciousness is given to what happens inside prisons and the policies and the ways in which people get put into solitary confinement and aren't just taken away from society, but then erased from whatever society the society that it does exist in prisons. Um, and um, and I think that, you know, as a journalist and as somebody who works on films about sort of investigations like this, I think that the public would do a lot better knowing more about what happens in prisons and about the kind of policies and regulations that exist and that are allowed to sort of be implemented and be codified over time when there's not much public attention being paid to it.
I would just add two things. One is that our social relationships make up our identity and who we are as human beings and are a fundamental human right. And two, the power of collective solidarity, that when we come together, we actually can accomplish more than we think.
It's wonderful. Yeah, great answers. And so where's the film right now? Tell our viewers and our readers, how can we find it? How can we find you? Is it on the film festival circuit? Tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, we're doing film festivals right now. So we had our premiere at Hot Docs in Toronto, and then we've had our California premieres. We will be at LALIF, Los Angeles Latino International Film Festival on Saturday, June 1st. The TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood, which we're really excited about. And we plan to keep doing festivals throughout the rest of the year.
And social media, how can we find you? Website.
Yeah, it's thestrikefilm.com and it's also the Strike Film on Instagram. So please do follow us there. And also you can learn about like upcoming screenings. And we aren't allowed to publicly share it yet, but there will be 3 more screenings in 3 cities coming up. So yeah, we'd love to see more people there.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we're working on trying to get this as available to as many people as possible. We're still figuring out our full distribution plans, but we want folks to follow us, figure out how they can attend a screening, eventually be available online. And we do have plans for an impact campaign where we can work with, make the film available to schools and universities and community organizations across the country. And we're also fundraising for that. We're fundraising for that on our website. So we definitely want folks to support because we think this film, in our initial screenings, it has already had such like a transformative impact on people. It really brings people on quite a journey. And we think it can impact a lot of folks.
I agree. I agree. It definitely impacted me, and we will be putting the word out. And thank you both for your time. We're the Hollywood Times official on our YouTube, hollywoodtimes.net, and on our website. And we'll be spreading the word. So thank you for your creativity and your time today. And maybe we can meet each other soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye.